I used to believe forgetting a name or misplacing your keys was just age talking, a natural hush after a lifetime of noise. But what I didn't know, what no one tells you, is that forgetfulness can be manufactured, shaped, twisted. You can be made to question your own grip on reality if someone wants it badly enough. My name is Margaret Hill. I'm 68 years old, and until a year ago, I had a peaceful life in the same brick house I'd shared with my husband, Harold, for 40 years. We built it from scratch, from the plaster in the walls to the rose garden in the back. But when Harold passed from heart failure, that silence I once embraced began to feel heavier, lonelier. That's when Gillian moved in. She said it was just temporary, to help out, she claimed. I didn't argue. It was comforting to have footsteps echoing in the hallway again. And Gillian, my only daughter, had always been a capable woman, smart, charming, and ambitious. Too ambitious, in hindsight. At first, it was small things. I'd tell her where the sugar jar was, and she'd say, "You already told me that, Mum." I'd laugh it off. We all repeat ourselves now and then. But the comments kept coming. "You missed your appointment again?" Or, "Mum, you told Aunt Denise you were 63. You're 68. Things I was sure I hadn't done. Or had I? I started doubting myself. I'd find the kettle still warm, but couldn't remember if I had boiled water. The front door would be unlocked at night, though I could have sworn I checked it. But the worst part wasn't forgetting. It was how Gillian looked at me, with pity, a kind of smug pity, as if I were already halfway gone. Then came the whispers. My neighbour Jan stopped waving at me. My old friend Miriam from church wouldn't return my calls. Gillian told me they were just concerned, that they knew things weren't quite right. It hit me like a punch to the chest. She was telling people I was losing my mind, and worse, they believed her. Still, I didn't want to believe it. You don't suspect your own child of cruelty until there's no choice left. That turning point came one Thursday morning when the mail arrived. I remember that day so clearly. The sky was overcast, and the wind carried that damp, earthy scent of rain. Among the bills and catalogues was a white envelope addressed to me, with a crisp blue logo in the corner, a law office. Inside was a formal letter stating the power of attorney over my estate had been transferred to Gillian Hill, effective immediately. My hands shook. My breath went shallow. I hadn't signed anything. I would have remembered that. Or would I? I stood in the hallway, clutching that paper, watching Gillian in the kitchen, laughing on the phone. She glanced at me, smiled, and went back to her conversation. Like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't unraveling in front of her. That's when the first real suspicion sank in. Maybe I wasn't forgetting things. Maybe I was being erased. I began watching more closely. The drawers in Harold's old desk were suddenly empty. His coin collection, gone. My jewelry box, which I kept in the back of my closet behind the winter coats, was missing 2 gold bangles he had gifted me on our 25th anniversary. Gillian told me I probably misplaced them. Maybe I had. Maybe I hadn't. I didn't know what was real anymore. One night, I heard her on the phone through the vent in the hallway. She didn't know I could hear. She was laughing and said, "The place will be sold by June. She thinks we're just fixing it up. Poor thing doesn't even realize half the estate's already liquid." My stomach dropped. I felt like I was outside my own body, floating above the life I used to live. I wanted to storm in there, confront her, scream. But something told me to stay quiet, to watch, to wait. The next morning I went to the attic and dusted off an old composition notebook. I began writing everything down. Dates, times, conversations, every odd behavior. I wrote in careful, slow pen strokes, hiding the notebook behind the old sewing machine Gillian never touched. I even used my cell phone to quietly record things when I could. The kind of voice notes people send to themselves to remember groceries. Only mine were about betrayal. I realized I was no longer living in my house. I was living in a staged play Gillian had written for me, where I was the confused, doddering old woman, and she the noble caretaker. But if she thought I was going to let her rewrite my story, she didn't know me at all, because I may be old, I may be grieving, but I am not gone, and I was about to show her that my mind was not just intact, it was sharper than ever. They say that when someone dies, their presence lingers in the home for a while, in the way light hits the drapes, the creak in the stairs, the smell on a sweater folded neatly in the linen closet. When Harold passed, I felt him everywhere. His chair stayed turned just the way he liked it. His coffee mug sat on the sink a week longer than it should have. But as Gillian's grip tightened on my world, it wasn't Harold's memory that faded. It was mine. She began treating me like I didn't belong in my own house. She'd answer the door when neighbors came, saying things like, "Mom's resting again. She gets confused in the evenings." I wasn't resting. I was sitting by the window, fully alert, listening. She started labeling things around the house. Bathroom, pantry, Margaret's shoes. I asked her why, and she said, "In case you forget again, Mum. It's not a big deal." I hadn't forgotten. I never forgot where my shoes were. She'd show me the calendar every morning and point to a doctor's appointment. "See, it's right here, like we talked about yesterday," she'd say. I didn't remember discussing it, and I began to wonder, was she making these things up? Or was I really slipping? What shook me most was the day I saw my own reflection and didn't recognize myself. Not because of age or wear, but because of how small I looked, how tired, how ghostly. Gillian had turned me into a background character, the kind people politely nod at and ignore. It got worse. My phone, the one Harold and I bought together, filled with pictures and voicemails, vanished. Gillian said I had misplaced it again. She offered to buy me a simpler one, just for emergencies. I declined. She bought it anyway. A flip phone, the kind with 3 buttons. I wasn't a toddler. My prescriptions were moved from the bathroom cabinet to a locked drawer. "You accidentally took 2 last week, remember?" I didn't. But what could I say? Argue over something I couldn't prove? That's how gaslighting works. It's not the scream in your face. It's the whisper that makes you question your own voice. I began to realize how alone I was. My sister hadn't visited in months. She used to drop by every other weekend. When I called her, on Gillian's monitored emergency phone, she sounded distant. "Jill said you don't really like having visitors anymore," she said, "and that you get easily overwhelmed now." I told her that wasn't true. She paused, uncertain. "Margaret, are you okay?" There it was again. That tone. Like I was lost. Like I was fading. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "I'm fine, Carol." But I wasn't. Gillian even reached out to my church. Pastor Nolan came by once, wearing that uncomfortable smile he wore during hospital visits. He prayed for me, asked God to guide me through this fog. I wanted to scream. There was no fog, just Gillian, choking the light out of my life, one polite lie at a time. But I didn't scream. I smiled and nodded and thanked him. Because by now I had learned. Every time someone treated me like I was broken, Gillian's plan advanced one more step. So I stopped protesting. I leaned into the role. I became softer, slower, quieter, just enough to avoid suspicion while keeping my eyes wide open. One evening, I watched her sorting through a box of old tax records in the den. She didn't notice me standing in the hallway. She pulled out papers, checked off items on a yellow legal pad, then slid a document into a folder labeled Cell. I stepped closer, enough to see it was the title to my house, the one Harold and I built with sweat, tears, and love. The place where our son took his first steps, where he died, too, in that tragic winter accident no one speaks of. I backed away before she saw me. My heart raced like a trapped bird inside my chest. The next morning I searched for the folder. It was gone. Not hidden, gone. She'd either moved it or destroyed the evidence. I needed more. So I turned to what I still had, my mind. I practiced remembering sequences of numbers. I memorized page numbers from the books I read. I recited old poems in the mirror. If I ever had to prove myself again, I would be bulletproof. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Every transaction, every visitor, every new lie. I started hiding voice recorders, one in the vent above the kitchen, another under the tablecloth in the dining room. Gillian talked a lot on the phone. She was careless in her triumph. One day, I caught her saying, "We just have to hold off a little longer. Once the estate clears, I'm golden." She laughed, a real laugh. I've never forgotten that sound, like glass breaking under silk. She didn't know she was laying out her own funeral, the funeral of her lies. I looked around my house that night. The photos she had boxed up, the books she donated without asking, the scent of Harold's cologne she had accidentally spilled on cleaning day, all part of the slow erasure. She was turning me into a shell, preparing the stage for my disappearance. But she made one mistake. She forgot I was still watching, and I was done playing dead. It's a strange feeling, pretending to be weak when you're anything but. But that's what I started doing. Gillian was expecting me to crack, so I gave her cracks, harmless ones. I'd call the dog by the wrong name, even though we haven't had one in years. I'd stare blankly when she asked what day it was. I began slipping accidentally. A fork dropped here, a missed bill there, just enough to feed her narrative, not enough to lose control. Behind the mask, I was sharper than ever. I woke up each morning with a purpose: document, observe, collect, and wait. One afternoon I slipped out, told Gillian I was going for a nap, then walked 3 blocks down to an old friend's house. Tom Spencer. He was Harold's best friend, and once a formidable estate lawyer before retiring. We hadn't spoken much since Harold's death, but when he opened the door and saw my face, pale, hollowed out by months of psychological war, he didn't hesitate. Over tea, I laid it all out. The recordings, the journal, the forged power of attorney. I even brought the original copy of my will, the one Harold and I wrote when Gillian was still someone I trusted. His eyes narrowed as he listened. "This is elder fraud," Tom said, jaw clenched. "And if we can prove intent, it's criminal." He helped me order a full neurological and cognitive evaluation through a doctor outside Gillian's web of influence. I passed it with numbers that would put some 40-year-olds to shame. Every number, name, and abstract pattern, I nailed them. I even remembered the doctor's secretary's name on the way out. I asked her to make 3 certified copies of my test results, one for court, one for backup, one for Gillian. Eventually, Tom and I went further. We drafted a new will, ironclad, notarized, hidden away under lock and key in a trust no one could touch but me. He advised me to leave everything exactly as it was, for now. "Let her keep digging her own grave," he said. "We'll pull the rug when the time is right." And so I did. I fed Gillian little false flags to build her confidence. I'd leave the front door unlocked once in a while. I scribbled a grocery list, then forgot it on the counter. She gloated. "Poor Mum, it's just getting worse," she said to a friend on speakerphone. I smiled behind her back. She was falling for it. Late one night, I found a copy of an email she printed and left on the dining table, carelessly. It was addressed to a realtor, scheduling a private showing for my house. The house she had no legal right to sell. I took a photo with my hidden phone and tucked the paper back exactly as it was. She also started taking meetings with what she called estate advisors. I recorded her bragging to one man in our living room. "Once the last papers go through, it's all mine." I mean, she's practically not even here anymore. Not here anymore. I was sitting right upstairs. The more she boasted, The more I logged, voice memos, paper trails. One night, I even snuck into her room while she was out. In her closet, tucked in a shoebox, was a folder labeled Transition Plan. Inside, property transfer papers, bank withdrawal slips, a letter she'd forged in my handwriting that stated I was willingly stepping down from financial responsibilities due to memory loss. I scanned every page with my phone and returned the folder perfectly. She never suspected a thing. My house, my memories, my legacy, all of it was under siege. But the thing about playing dumb, you get to watch the villain monologue before the end. By now, Gillian had fully embraced the role of my savior. She'd parade me in front of friends or professionals like some frail antique she was doing her best to care for. She cried in front of the financial planner. It's so hard watching her decline. I had to clench my jaw to keep from laughing. She even started filming little videos, showing me stirring tea, blinking slowly, forgetting a word or two. For memory documentation, she said. But I knew what they were really for. Evidence. She was building a visual case to go with the forged documents, setting me up for long-term care, or worse, and I let her. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, Tom and I had moved to stage 2, prepping a court response. He filed motions silently, ones that wouldn't raise red flags yet, but positioned everything for what he called the takedown. All we needed was a triggering event, something public. It came one Monday morning, in the form of a real estate open house. I accidentally overheard Gillian confirming with the agent, "We'll just tell guests she's in assisted living already. She won't come downstairs." I did. I came down wearing my husband's old cardigan and stood in the foyer as strangers walked through my living room. One woman said, "Oh, this is a lovely space. The daughter's doing such a good thing." I smiled and nodded. Then I looked directly into the agent's eyes and said, "Would you like some tea while I show you the deed with my name still on it?" He turned ghost white. Gillian rushed down the stairs, faking a soft, gentle touch on my arm. "Mum, you should be resting. You're confused again." "No," I said sharply. "I'm not. And neither is this man. Tell him the truth, Gillian." The guests looked on, wide-eyed. Gillian stammered, faked a laugh, then made everyone leave early. She blamed my episode, but the damage was done. She was losing control. For the first time, she didn't look confident. She looked scared. 2 days later, she scheduled a court date to officially declare me mentally unfit and assume full conservatorship. That was her final move. But she didn't know. I had already played my hand. She was walking into her own courtroom funeral. The irony of it all? Gillian filed the motion to declare me mentally incompetent on my birthday. 69 years old. And there I was, seated on a hard wooden bench in courtroom 4C, wearing Harold's brooch on my lapel, watching my only child try to bury me alive. Legally. She arrived in a beige pantsuit, holding a fat leather folder and a smug little smirk. She even brought 2 of her friends as support, the same ones who hadn't spoken to me in over a year. One of them glanced my way, then quickly looked down like I might turn to dust on the spot. The judge, a stout woman in her 50s, looked over the case file, then back at me. "Mrs. Hill, do you understand why you're here today?" she asked. I nodded. "I do, Your Honor." Gillian cut in sweetly. "She's had good days, Your Honor. That's why we're here, before things decline further. We just want what's best." I almost applauded the performance. She really believed this was going to be her show, her well-rehearsed finale. But then my attorney, Tom, stood, quiet, unshaken, and armed. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he began, "this entire case is built on manipulated perception, forged documents, and hearsay. But rather than make you take our word for it, we brought something better." He handed the judge a thick manila folder. Inside, my cognitive test results, certified by a licensed neurologist, dated, sealed, Notarized. Gillian blinked. The smirk faded slightly. Tom continued. In addition, we have medical evidence that contradicts the claims of mental decline. Mrs. Hill passed a battery of tests with exceptional scores, including short-term memory, executive function, and logical reasoning. She studied for those, Gillian blurted. She passed because she's fine, Tom replied coolly. Unlike these. He pulled out a USB drive and inserted it into the courtroom monitor. The screen lit up with audio. Gillian's voice, crystal clear. The place will be sold by June. She thinks we're just fixing it up. Poor thing doesn't even realize half the estate's already liquid. The room was silent. Gillian's friends exchanged horrified glances. Next came another clip, her talking to a man from a brokerage firm. Once the papers go through, it's all mine. I mean, she's practically not even here anymore. Gillian jumped up. That's illegal. You can't record me. Tom smiled. Actually, in this state, single-party consent is legal, and Margaret Hill is that party. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Hill, is that your daughter's voice? I nodded, keeping my eyes on Gillian. It is, and I have more. We presented everything. Photographs of documents she forged, her transition plan, the video of her misleading realtors about me being in assisted living, all of it. Her masterpiece of deception collapsed like wet paper in front of a courtroom full of strangers. By the end of the hour, the judge didn't look amused. She looked furious. Ms. Hill, she said sternly to Gillian, I'm ordering a formal investigation into financial misconduct, elder fraud, and possible identity manipulation, effective immediately. All of your privileges as power of attorney are revoked. Gillian's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. She looked like she might faint. And as for you, Mrs. Hill, the judge said to me, her tone softening, you're sharper than most of us in this courtroom. I smiled, just slightly. When the bailiff escorted Gillian out, not under arrest, not yet, but shaking, she turned back to look at me. That look, I'll never forget it. Not anger, not even betrayal. Fear. The kind of fear that only comes when someone realizes the mask they wore to steal everything just slipped, and the real face underneath is going to be seen by everyone. Gillian's name was suddenly everywhere. Her job, her standing in the community, her carefully crafted public image, gone in a weekend. She tried damage control, released a statement claiming it was a family misunderstanding, but then the footage went public, the one from our living room camera, where she joked with a friend. Honestly, by the time she figures out I've sold the place, she won't even remember she owned it. They played that clip on the local news 3 nights in a row. People started reaching out, not just friends and neighbors, but strangers, women from across the state, some elderly, some their daughters, all of them with stories that sounded like mine. My niece is doing something similar. I think my sister-in-law is trying to isolate my dad. The messages poured in. The sheriff's department opened a formal criminal investigation. Fraud, abuse of legal power, attempted unlawful sale of protected property. The charges stacked up fast. And just like that, Gillian, who once held my phone, my checkbook, my calendar, my name, was now the one under guardianship, temporarily at least, until her court date. She called once from a restricted number. I didn't answer. She wrote a letter. I never opened it. She begged Tom to mediate a conversation. I told him, let her speak to a mirror instead. For a while, I kept expecting to feel hollow, to feel like I'd lost something. But I didn't, because she wasn't taken from me. She was unmasked. In her absence, my house felt warm again. I opened all the curtains, put Harold's pictures back on the walls, baked banana bread without someone watching me like a hawk. I even adopted a little dog from the shelter, a shaggy black mutt I named Justice. People started inviting me places again. Pastor Nolan came over with flowers. My sister finally visited, this time with no pity in her eyes, only apology. and I forgave her. It wasn't her fault. Gillian had fooled everyone. She just hadn't counted on fooling someone who knew what it meant to stay silent until the moment mattered. I took a check from the frozen sale account Gillian had started and donated half to an elder rights advocacy centre. It would have been easy to hate Gillian, to spend my days cursing her name, painting her as the villain in every breath. And believe me, I was tempted. But eventually I realized hate was her weapon, not mine. And I had other tools, like memory, like resilience, like the truth. What Gillian took from me wasn't just money or paperwork. She tried to steal my identity. Piece by piece, she chipped away at the woman I was, the mother, the widow, the homeowner, the friend. She wore my grief like a costume and paraded around in it, collecting sympathy and control. And for a while, I let her. But I learned something powerful in those silent months. People forget how dangerous a quiet woman can be. Once her name hit the news, I didn't need to say much. People remembered who I was, and more importantly, they remembered who she pretended to be. Invitations returned. So did old friends. Even Miriam, who hadn't spoken to me in almost a year, showed up with tears in her eyes and banana muffins in her hands. "I should have known," she whispered. I just smiled. I didn't need her guilt. I just needed her presence. I updated my will again, one last time. Gillian's name was scrubbed entirely, not a cent, not a ring, not even a framed photo. Instead, I left her portion to a grant in my husband's name, given to caretakers who protect, not prey on, the elderly. The irony? It's named after me. Not her. Me. And I didn't stop there. Tom and I started a small legal fund for elderly women who'd been manipulated by family members. We called it the Roseback Fund, for the garden Harold and I built together, the one Gillian tried to uproot. And then, months later, something I didn't expect. A letter from prison. From her. It was handwritten. No lawyer polish, no sugar-coated phrasing. It was messy, apologetic, almost childlike in tone. She wrote, "I was scared, Mum. I saw you slipping away and thought if I didn't take control, I'd be alone. I didn't do it for greed. Not at first. I just didn't want to feel powerless." Funny how the powerless often make others feel powerless to survive. She ended the letter with, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth. If you still have your memory, I hope you use it to remember me before all this." I folded the letter. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because some stories don't deserve sequels. Instead, I took the letter and tucked it behind the mirror in Harold's study. I didn't burn it. I didn't shred it. I left it there, untouched, a relic, a fossil of a woman I once raised, who chose her path and carved her name into courtroom records instead of birthday cards. People often ask if I miss her. The truth? I miss the girl she used to be, the one who wore pigtails and ran through the rose garden barefoot, the one who cried when she lost her first tooth, the one who, once upon a time, called me Mom, like it meant something. But I don't miss the woman who replaced her, that woman I buried in court. Now every morning I water the roses. I pour coffee into Harold's mug and sit on the back porch with justice curled at my feet. And I breathe, slow, deep, guiltless, because I didn't just survive Gillian. I outlived her lies. And when the world tried to decide who I was without asking me, I reminded it. I was Margaret Hill. I still am, and I always knew who I was.